do you find the meaning in all of that? It's David King's task. The Monday Means Test is for Jameson whiskey, triple distilled, twice as smooth, one of a kind. Hello to you, Kingy.
Morning, G. Mate, no one can find the meaning. How do you work out footy at the moment?
It's so good when that. It usually happens a bit later in the season. That round comes along.
Yeah, well, maybe it does, but we're just talking then. It's come at a perfect time because all balls are in the air now, and in that middle part of the ladder, and we're going to have 4 weeks of the bye, and the ladder will lie to us a little bit.
Yep,
you won't really know where you sit, which is great because it just means the intrigue and the passion is hooked into your club and your team for another month of footy deep into the season.
So we committed ourselves to brackets at the end of round 11 the last time the ladder would make sense for 4 weeks. How many brackets have you decided to go with?
Oh, that's a good question. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8 brackets?
8 if you call the West Coast a bracket.
You may as well just have 18 at that
This is a
stage.
disaster for me on social media, Gerard. This is a disaster for me.
All right. So what are your terms of reference?
I tried to come up with something for you. So 24 carat, absolute pure gold in terms of how they play, got a distinct point of difference, and they tear apart your plan, right?
Yep.
So I don't worry about wins and losses. If you've still played so Brisbane got beat. Collingwood and Brisbane are in that bracket. Brisbane got beat, but they played pretty well in a loss on the road. I think they kicked 1 goal 9 or 1 goal 10.
1-9.
Yeah. So that, to me, they're the two clear standouts. Got a pure plan, got a pure system, and got good enough talent to win it.
24 carat gold.
As we sit. 18 carat gold. So popular choice, 75% gold, Gerard. So there's some flaws in there, but they're still pretty good. So Port Adelaide, Western Bulldogs, there's some discussion to have there. We'll have that later. And only minor flaws, I think, in Fremantle and Adelaide. So they're on that next rung for me. Then you got your 12 carat gold, which was sort of the gold of a bygone era, Gerard. Richmond and Sydney. I put Sydney in there because I think that now they're being exposed, lesser talent's being exposed because some of those older guys aren't there. Your yellow gold. Sort of looks like gold. It looks different. It just looks different, and it's hard to recognise change. That's the Suns and the Giants. Giants are doing some things it's pretty special, and the Suns, I think people are very, very slow to warm to what Stuart choosing, which we'll talk about in a moment. There's your rolled gold. It's the art of deception. I'm not even sure it is gold. And that's Geelong and Melbourne, and throw in Essendon. That's worth talking about later on. But I think that there's are they absolutely what they think we are? So that's the rolled gold. Fool's gold.
Oh, I love fool's gold.
It may even be brass. Carlton. You get a lot of calls on a Monday morning. A lot of feedback. And then you got your 10 carat gold. Not a common variety, Gerard.
Right.
It's actually only 40% there.
Okay.
Hawthorn, the Kangaroos, and I think St Kilda. In terms of talent, I think they're 40% there.
Hawthorn, North and St Kilda.
And then there's one club that's still mining. They're still
10?
They're at Sovereign Hill.
10?
Simo's at Sovereign Hill with a pan in hand. That's West Coast. You can't really bracket them anywhere. So they haven't started to acquire their gold yet.
24 carat. Collingwood and Brisbane, 18 carat, Port, Bulldogs, Fremantle, Adelaide, 12 carat, old gold, Richmond and Sydney, rolled gold, is it gold?
Yellow, did you get
Geelong,
yellow?
Melbourne and Essendon, yellow gold, Gold Coast and the Giants, fool's gold, Carlton, 10 carat gold, Hawthorn, North Melbourne and St Kilda, and panning at Sovereign Hill, West Coast.
I think that's all 18.
It's good bracketing. I didn't see that.
Don't put that
unfolding
online
that way.
because that kills me when it's in the written word on Twitter.
Leave that. The big issue is the reigning premier, Geelong.
Yes.
You forecast this on Friday morning in prospect of what couldn't happen.
I'm looking at their profile closely, and with the stuff without the footy's not what it has been in the past. And I know there's injuries everywhere. This is a discussion ahead of time. It's on a knife's edge. They can't afford to have a hiccup at home.
And a hiccup at home is exactly what they had.
Yeah, they did. And we talk a lot about having the experienced campaigners just to walk you around the park and to set up at stoppage and to organise and just make the right decisions at the right time. They gave up goals through inexperience. Like Nevitt tries to step back through a hole in a dangerous part of the ground, costs you a goal at a bad time. So little things like that I think most teams have had to go through while Geelong haven't. When Geelong have been really stable, really experienced club for a long period of time, really haven't had to blood a lot of young kids. Now they're having to, so they're feeling the pain of what the comps probably had to do against them. I think they're in real trouble. They're going to struggle to get some significant players playing together for a run of games. Get that, he called it cohesion in the post-match. Get that cohesion back. Find form. The names will come back in, but they're not. You don't come back in and play at 100%. You have to build again personally to then build again as a collective. So I just think this is just going to be one of those years. And there's no problems. No one's upset with them. Or you just got to say, hey, thanks for last year, and we've just hit the wall. And it just does show you that it's how it doesn't have to go wrong everywhere. Just have to be off a little bit. So injuries have played their part, and I think that now they probably get the best of other teams now. So losing a game at home for them is significant to a Giants who no one's really talking about. So it was a basic plan that they come with: get the ball in, get it to ground, hunt at ground level. Their back six are vulnerable when the ball's on the deck. We saw it all day. I thought it was terrific coaching from Adam Kingsley. And then guys like Brent Daniels, who I think is a really good player in the competition. I don't know what his scope is. Toby Green in that first half. And then in the second half, it was a whole host of players. So really, really good brand of footy and a great buy-in from the Giants. But it just exposed everything that's not quite right at Geelong at the minute.
That last goal for the Giants was emblematic of it. You saw it ahead of time. This was how it unfolded on the Fox Footy coverage.
Well, Daniels is the one. He's the one that's busy at these forward 50 stoppages. Must be clamped here from a Geelong point of view. Back into play. Where's Toby?
Play on.
Little toe poke off the deck. Jack Henry had to get there. Oh, it's open. It's alive. And the tiny dancer got there. Daniels.
He is tiny.
Picked him, didn't clamp him, hurt on the goal line.
Well, if you watch the last quarter back, which we all like to do, and in the middle of the week, you just see at every stoppage he's getting space, and the good players find a way to get hold of the footy, and we all worry about Toby Green. And sometimes, if Toby's not there, then Daniels doesn't get that space. So these are the sorts of things. It's not who you play; it's when you play them. You'd love to play them without Toby the previous few weeks, but that's not the reality of what happened on the weekend. So we didn't think that was an available upset opportunity on the weekend, and now they leave a club in a little bit of turmoil heading into the bye rounds.
Yeah, so 5 and 6 instead of 6 and 5, sheltering under the door frame at home, knowing that the Bulldogs next week, who are going to overwhelm them in the midfield on the evidence of what we've seen in the past couple of weeks. So they're a game behind the measuring heading to the bye, and that's going to make a big difference if they do accumulate the group at the back end of the season. They're going to be coming from a long way back.
And I'm probably talking about their draw more than their form as such, because they're going to have to play at a 9 out of 10 level to beat teams like Port Adelaide in Adelaide, and you've got Melbourne coming down the highway, you've got Brisbane at the Gabba, you've got Sydney. Even Sydney in Sydney will be a challenge because they're just hard to beat. It's hard to travel and win, and every team brings their best against the best. They've been the premier. So that they get full-toed odds from everyone.
James Sicily was the best bit of the weekend. Mark McClure called that game with us. He thought it was one of the best individual games he had ever seen. It was hard to argue in real time with that, David King.
Yeah, it's a great call because he's going into games, James Sicily, knowing that there's a chance they can win, but the reality is they're going to lose more than they win this year. And his main role is to invest in the young kids and teach and guide and assist and live through their mistakes and at times be made look silly himself because of their mistakes. There's a mental cost. There's a cost to that, isn't there? There's a tax on that. And footy can be, it can be unrelenting. And when you're living that, I think it's difficult to then just keep fronting up. And he's done a great job, hasn't he? I sort of mentioned all their leaders last night: Luke Bruce, Frosty, Sicily, Hardwick, Moore, even though he's a little bit younger. Jarman Impey. No one talks about Jarman Impey. What Jarman Impey does is quite special and quite brilliant. So I really like the leaders that they've stuck with, because they absolutely lead the right way. And when this group, when the foundation of this rebuild is done, there's going to be a lot to work with there. I think we're just Whedle. You just touched on him then. He looks terrific. The young kids in the midfield we've had rave reviews about, and Newcomb keeps doing what he's doing, and Will Day. But to be able to lead this group, you need someone who can just sort of, to use a Craig McRae discussion, have the windscreen wipers on. Yep. Post game, post individual play, and just live with mistakes. So the performance is one thing. To actually deliver upon your talent is one thing, but then the mental side of it would be a huge challenge. So full credit to James.
Yeah, this has been the folly of bracketing Hawthorn with North Melbourne and West Coast. They never belonged in the same bracket.
Yeah, but I think there were stages this year where they were really uncompetitive in game, but that's okay. We all know where they're going.
Yeah, we know what this is, and that's a moment that they will reflect on. Great win, excellently coached. Sam Mitchell's plan was first class. So we're going early with PFI preliminary final integrity, because it's time to dig a little bit deeper on Melbourne. David King, you've had red flags on Melbourne for a little while, and now you can bookend the 2 Fremantle losses at the MCG and use that as a body of work. It was round 11 both years. They're 13 wins and 12 losses in that period of time. Run Melbourne through the high-end examination.
Yeah, when you're good, when you're very good in the competition, when you've won a premiership and you're sort of amongst the top 4 or 5 teams, you get picked apart every pre-season, and there's always a template. The teams will exhibit that can defeat them. So I think everyone pretty much knows what you need to do. You need to avoid Stephen May. So he only has 5 intercepts on the weekend. They kick short of. They don't bomb the ball in Fremantle. They go short when they can, and the forward handball game caused them problems. They're gettable now at stoppage, which is now more of a problem than it has been. So they're being outscored from clearance. So they used to lose clearance because they just go with their prime movers, and the opposition say, well, they're too good for ours, so let's roll up a half-forward flanker and try and outnumber. So then they get the spare man behind the ball, which means that the opposition will probably win the footy at stoppage more than Melbourne, just through volume, and then they won't be able to get through because it'll be Lever or May behind the ball. Well, that's no longer the case. That's not happening anymore. So there's change. As soon as you make a team change what makes them strong, then you're back into the ruck a little bit. So that's what's happened. I think they've lost that aura that looked at they're invincible. We talked about Max. Max was okay on the weekend. He took some big contested marks. They're okay. It was a good game of footy.
Yes.
Both teams playing pretty well. But Melbourne at the MCG against an interstate team had been one of the easiest ways to make money for 5 years, Gerard. But it just doesn't appear the case. And I have a fear that every contest is not at the nth degree now. That's just my view. And Simon doesn't share that view, and Max Gawn didn't share that view last week. So I'll cop my wax, but we're outside looking in. So we don't have to, they don't have to listen to what we say, and why would they? But I just don't feel that it's as invested as what it was. Melbourne fans probably disagree with me, and that's okay. But, I did see their pre-season, and I said to you, they've got a heap of wins in the first 12 rounds so they can have a little lull and then come again in the back half of the year. I don't know if they're going to get that opportunity to rest too many in-game or game-to-game whilst they make this charge. I can't see them being a top 2 team, which doesn't mean they can't win it, but it just means they might have to travel to get to to a grand final, through a prelim final or first week.
Will they need to change a little bit, do you think?
Well, they've got to find the answer inside forward 50, don't they? And I still think Max has to do so much work behind the footy to help them intercept mark and just stay strong behind the ball. Their defensive numbers are pretty good. I think that if Bailey Fritsch doesn't get scoreboard impact forward of centre, they can look a little bit humdrum in that forward half of the ground. I still think that the Petrarca wild card is a trump card that I don't think Simon wants to play with too much. He wants him to be a midfielder that can still drift forward. Whereas I think his best position for this team in the big games at the end of the year will be more time forward than midfield. It'll be, instead of being 70 midfield, 30 forward, it'll be 70 forward, 30 mid. They just need the extra wild card down there, in my opinion. We don't move the magnets, but we just watch. What's the biggest challenge to defeat Melbourne is Petrarca in the forward half of the ground for me.
Can you see them in a preliminary final?
Yeah, I think they'll be there.
Yeah.
They're still a very good team, but there's a gap. There's a bit of a gap at the moment for me between the 24 Carriers in Brisbane, particularly at home. They're going to be incredibly if they can finish second. The best position on the AFL ladder, the toughest one right now, will be second position. I think Collingwood are going to wrap up first pretty quickly, and then whether it's Port Adelaide or whether it's Brisbane or whether it's Melbourne is huge. So to get to a prelim, you don't want to be having to go through the Gabba at all.
Yep.
Or the Adelaide Oval. So they've got a challenge. They know that they've got scope to get better. But there's a template.
So that's PFI on Melbourne. The pressure index is clearly on Carlton. I know people want to fix this in on the coach, but it is so much more broad than that. It's clearly on the president and his board. It's on Brian Cook, who's seen all of this before, and that's how to react, not overreact. It's obviously there on the coach. It's clear on Harry Mackay, Patrick Cripps. Like every level of that club is under severe strain right now.
So in the end, it just comes down to performance. Are you performing your role? Are you delivering upon an 8 out of 10, a 9 out of 10 output every week? And there's too many that are well short of that. There's too many that are not even close to that discussion. And there's too few that are ticking it off. So, everyone's looking at Harry Mackay and saying he's the answer to all problems. He's not. I mean, there's so many facets that are just off. And I think Vossi's doing a lot right. So if you go through the numbers, some of their contest work, post clearance is seriously good. Look, we track a lot of their, without the footy stuff. Their ability to stop the opposition moving the ball is pretty good. It's pretty good. But then there's holes in their defensive 50. There's holes in their conversion, which we keep talking about. Their ball use forward of centre. It's almost like take care with the footy as you bring it out of the back line. And then when they step centre forward, it's, just get it in. We've got a couple of big boys. Now we just get it in. It shouldn't be now a different mindset. No, the possession of the football is gold. So they just don't take care with that entry going inside forward 50, and it makes it so difficult for those guys to be their best. I still think their forward 50 targets are way out of whack. They went to Harry Mackay 18 times on the weekend, and then Charlie, I think, 6 or 7. I mean, that's not right. If you've got the best forward in the competition, you go to him as often as you can in a position where he can hit the scoreboard. Now a bloke sitting on the bench that hardly on the park bench that hardly watches the game would understand that's good business. You don't have to be an AFL coach to understand that's good business. So correct that, fix that, because Harry's not going to win you too many games at the moment. So don't let him cost you games. So it seems silly to me to have Charlie further from goal when he's the only one that is likely to kick you a bag of 6, 7 or 8 goals. Do you agree?
Yep.
So how do they not see that?
Well, I think there's been a bit of hoping that it would rectify, and maybe there'd been enough evidence during the week to justify that, but it's not there out on the field, and it is an inhibitor now. So you must make adjustment on Friday night. So we threw up on Crunch Time the idea of play Joe Danaher's role, go and be the second ruckman, feel good about your footy for 10 minutes at a time, and see what that looks like when you go back down forward, where the walls aren't closing in on you. By the end of Friday night, he was dropping marks that were coming straight at his hands. That's your mental disintegration across the course of a night where you well know how it's gone wrong and you know that everybody's staring in on you. We see this in elite sport all the time, but somehow you've got to break that cycle.
Yeah, and deliver upon your role. The other part, and I showed some vision last night on first crack of Adam Sard. Now, he is the best kick in the game. For players who have had 10 kicks on average or more across the course of the season, he is ranked number 1 field kick in the game. So good business is to give the best ball user in the game the football as often as you can. So when he runs past a Mitch McGovern or he runs past a Jacob Wiedering, hey, as good as players as you guys are, he's number 1 in the game. Give him the footy and let him use his speed and his evasion. The gap between what the Swans did with Nick Blakey and Carlton did with Adam Sard was the game. They gave the ball to Blakey when he just called for it in awful spots.
Yes.
And then had to find his way out of trouble and then use his foot skills, which he did because he's a good player and a good kick. They've got to give Sard those same opportunities. They set fire to 2 walk-in, stroll-in goals by not giving him handballs in the absolute middle of the ground, which I showed last night. You do so much to find 2 goals in a game of footy. You change the way you want to play, the whole method and strategy around what you want to do game day to find 2 goals. You give 2 handballs to Adam Sard and there's 2 goals. It sounds ridiculous, but unless they make a change with that, you've got to find a way to get him from 11 kicks a game to 16 kicks a game. And if you can do that, I'll guarantee there's 2 to 3 more goals. And not kicking out from full back.
Yep.
I'm talking about the ones on the fly. The stand rule means the bloke on the mark can't impact him. Let him run, let him charge, let him be your Nick Dacos.
And what does Patrick Cripps do right now?
Yeah, see, I've been studying him. We've talked about him a couple of times.
Yep.
My best sort of mental vision of Patrick Cripps is being big, getting your hands on the ball, and then when he takes possession of the ball, in times gone by, he becomes this violent, angry, untackleable beast. You know, hands going everywhere, ripped hair and bust, threatening a hole, and then giving the handball out to someone who can break. And in the past, it was Walsh and Hewitt and these guys on the outside. I don't see him as violent inside the traffic. Now, he's still getting his hands on, he's still doing okay, but it's not drawing a crowd like it used to. It's just being defeated by one man. And now teams have worked out that if you just put an average stoppage player on him, Isaac Heaney is an average stoppage player. Bailey Smith is a poor stoppage player. They now just stand next to Patrick Cripps. Don't worry about structure. Just go and stand next to him. He'll take you to the footy. And if he wins it, be there to harass. And if he doesn't win it, and we do, you're on your bike and you're charging forward and we're going to exploit the fact that he can't travel. He can't run. It's an awful position to be in. So what he's got to do is become the clearance contest brute that plays with violence, that stacks so many clearances and puts his team into great space by drawing a crowd and getting someone, threatening a hole and getting the game to the outside, that they say, hey, we've now got to do something about Cripps. We can't let him do this at stoppages. So until he does that, nothing will change. He'll chase us all the way down the ground to his own demise and to their demise week in, week out. So it's up to him to change that. And then it's up to Michael Voss to say, hey, mate, we can't have you chasing these blokes. We will put a player behind, off the stoppage to take care of that. You just win the footy. So there's a few things to play out there. But in the end, you're talking about 3 or 4 different things. That's why they're where they are.
Yep. And that's the strategy piece and all that's going on the field. Do you think there's a risk that the off-field now might blow the whole thing up?
No, my theory is I think he's a good coach. I do. There's a few things that are going wrong. That they're all fixable, but there's a lot going right. I agree with what he said in the post-match. I wouldn't have been as glowing as he was, but I just think you settle. Just relax. Stability is your best friend in these sorts of circumstances. I hope he's there for 6 years and we find out whether he can or he can't. They jump too quick to he's the problem, sack him. That's not the answer. And to be fair, it never has been when someone's 2 to 3 years in.
So our PFI and our pressure index meet on Friday night footy, so that's going to be a big focus of the week as Melbourne and Carlton prepare for each other. That's 8 in a row for Port Adelaide. As you could have seen at three-quarter time, the idea of Richmond over the top on a day that meant so much to them in really difficult conditions as the game went along, but Port Adelaide clearly had the better of the last quarter and they are enhanced by it, which leads us to our debate for Syfe. Smarter investing, backed by the pros. Download Syfe. Port Adelaide is 9-2. Ken Hinkley has never coached better. What do they do? Oh, and Koshy's got a bit more time on his hands now. He's stepping down as the host of Sunrise.
Is that a good thing for Kenny?
Never.
Oh, no.
You know what, the president having more time on their hands.
Well, I'll tell you what they did have to do. You got to go through Chicago, Gerard. You got to win at the G. So they were 0-3 in 2022. And they had an awful day against Collingwood at the start of the year. So this was their next time up. A gettable opposition who are a little bit banged up at the moment, and they put them to the sword. So tick that box. You need to win at the MCG. So, but my question for you is, let's just say this season continues as it is for Port. August is what we're being told is when all decisions will be made.
End of the home and away was what they pegged.
Yeah, which is an interesting time, isn't it?
Well, they're now going into September, aren't they?
Yeah. So
does it bring it back or push it forward?
Well, this is what I want to discuss with you. So I want you to sell to me that if they think Kenny is the man, what would be the likely extension? Are we talking 2 years, 3 years? And if that's the case, at what point of the season do you say we're signing him? Given that you've sort of set a benchmark, even though you haven't said the benchmark of preliminary final minimums.
Yeah, I would be interested to go back and understand exactly where that came from. The end of August said to me, we'll rate our season in its entirety, home and away, rather than going, and then by the way. So that set the threshold for me of being part of the finals, returning to the finals after the 1 year out.
So you don't think he has to get to a certain marker in the final series?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. So here's the thing. I don't know, and I don't really understand where that came from.
It's an unfair question.
I think the notion of having to make a preliminary final is a ludicrously high bar. Like what you need to know...
A preliminary final?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's not a high bar.
You need to know, they had to know, is this team, has that moment passed, or is this a resurgent team that has moved to its new generation? That much we know already. We know that this is Butters' team and Rosie's team and Horne-Francis's team. I think the first 11 games has answered that. This is no longer Boak's team or Wine's team or Charlie's team. So I think that was one of the key parameters. And then it was...
one of Ken's parameters?
No, one of the club's parameters.
Clubs, yep.
Because the old group wasn't going to take them any further. This had to be on the new group. And the new group has picked up the mantle, and they have done so under Ken's outstanding tutelage. The connection between player group and coach, that has to be the linchpin in deciding is he still the guy, has to be his command and relationship over the group. And I don't think that's ever been stronger. It's Kenny's centerpiece of his coaching. Mm-hmm. I think we've visibly seen it through the shop window of coming down to the bench, and he's spoken around. They are playing for him. That is undeniable. Every key moment, tough moment they've faced, they've been able to burst through it with that clarity, unity, and purpose, which defines teams who are going places.
So, interested in the fact you don't think he has to make a prelim then?
No, I don't.
So if he bombs out second week with this group's a special group, Gerard.
This group's only just getting started.
I get that, but Ken's not just getting started.
No.
Ken's been there 11 years. So this is the second version of this young group coming through. So the blokes you mentioned before, they didn't get it done with.
Nope.
So now
they
there's a
made
fresh wave.
prelims, and that bought him the time to reinvent the team. They made that critical choice.
But they failed with this model previously. It's important that with this fresh group of stars that they can achieve. Otherwise, the question becomes, is Ken a non-winner? Is he the guy that can take us to the promised land? And if he bombs out before a prelim through this season, you'd have to question that, Jerry.
I'd think coming into the season, very few people would have gone to meet par. Port have got to be in a prelim.
I wouldn't have said that.
No.
Because I think
that's an artificial marker.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's real, and that doesn't actually get you. If they don't make a prelim this year, Rosie's in the 90-game bracket, Butters is in the 70-game bracket, and Horn Francis is in the 20-game bracket.
No problem with it. We all get that.
This is not peak Port Adelaide time.
No, but he's had that group before, and we're talking about, is he the man? So that's the question for Koshy, not really where the list is at. The list is fine. Is this the guy is the question. And at some point in the year, so if that's the case, what you're saying, there's no marker in the finals, then when should they sign him?
Well, I think they should do it at the start of August. If you think you're in it after round 20, in that premiership conversation, truly in it, and they'll know by then because they've got some pretty stacked games ahead. They have one of the harder draws. Bulldogs at Marvel, Geelong, Collingwood, and then Geelong again. I think the emotional uplift that goes with this is happening. If this continues on this path, I would do it at the start of August and let it permeate through the group. I think it could be a really powerful intangible.
Can I say the flip side?
And I'll do it on the basis that this would be a team that's graph is going up over the next 2 and 3 seasons. And once you've got the evidence that the graph is going up, I think it's there now, but you'll know by round 20. That gives you another 9 games to add to it. Once you're sure that this is locked in, that's when I would pull.
I think their recruiting is a gold medal standard. You know, the acquisition of Finlayson, Aliir, and then the trading of Wingard to get Rosie, the ability to get Horn Francis. All the coach has a role in all that, so it's hand in hand. I get that, but what if they don't sign? So just go the other way for a moment. So we get to August, there's no news, and we see them almost starting into a final series without any news, without anything happening with the contract. Does that concern you? Would you be comfortable with them saying, let's just sit on this?
Yes, but I do think you might miss a moment in time. But yeah, is that they said they committed themselves to the full body of work. So if they stay with the full body of work, that's okay.
If I was Koshy, I wouldn't be in a hurry to re-sign. I'd play the year out.
Yep.
And do you risk losing him if that's the case? Well, if you go on and have the success you think you're going to have, whether that be a preliminary final marker, a grand final marker, I don't know what the markers are. I don't know what they think this group can achieve. That's on them. If he hits those markers and then chooses to leave and go coach another club, well, that's okay. That's okay because you've sort of set this in place at the start of the year, and you haven't had that. If you get to a grand final, win a grand final, he's not going to want to leave. He'll sign the contract you put in front of him, and in fact, it'll probably be a longer contract because he's been that coach. Is that fair?
Yep.
So I can see that happening quite easily. Just go and show us you can do it. We've backed you for 11 years. So don't hold a gun at our head.
And he's not doing that in any way.
He's not. So I can see it happening both ways, the early signature or let's just run it out.
He got that right, Justin Longmuir. He even said it. Embrace the chaos of the game. This is such a good shift within season. Such a good shift from where they were when they presented into the season, and it looked like they wouldn't amount to much, to where they are in round 11 with 4 wins in the bank. And you can listen to whatever you like, but you just had to watch the way they changed from after quarter time, I reckon, at the SCG and embrace the chaos of the game.
Yeah, they've refuted the fact that they've been changing or revolving over the last few weeks. But if you look at the way they defended last year, first half of last year, we kept saying it's fake footy. It won't take you to the promised land. You can't just chip the ball around an uncontested mark all day and win big games of footy. That's just unrealistic. Doesn't happen. So now they've evolved. They've embraced chaos. They'll find out how good they are now, and I think they're pretty good. I don't know whether they're there this year to be an absolute contender, but I'm in love with Hayden Young. I mean, he's a high-end draft pick. I get that. I think he could be a Jordan Dawson type player. I'd love to see him get a run in the midfield. Big body, damaging left leg, wants the absolute hardest option every time. I like those sort of players. And he'd be a goal kicker, I reckon. So they've got a lot of toying to still do with the magnets. Welcome aboard. It's good to have them, Gerard. And let's see what sort of chaos they can create.
Not playing not to lose, we're playing to win.
Yeah.
So it's all there in his language. And it feels as though there was a conversation between leadership group and coach at some point in the weeks where it didn't look like it was going to amount to anything. And I give huge kudos to teams who make in-season adjustment. You can be stubborn, you can wait too long, or you can get on with the business, and it can't be done in 1 week. You have to have incremental change to bed in what you want, but they've bedded it before the bye rather than waiting for the bye when they might have been out of viability.
It's a good call. Look, Jackson's worth every penny. We saw that on the weekend, and whether it's this week or in 10 weeks' time or in 20 weeks' time, he's worth every penny. Interested in the game of Nathan Fyfe. I thought he was significant early in that game just to be the big bulldozer at clearance. I think he had 4 kicks and 16 handballs or 17 handballs, something like that. The ratio was exactly how you want it with Nathan Fyfe.
Yep.
So has he accepted that he's now got better kickers around him and using them? Is there an issue where he can't kick at the moment? I'm not sure. Has he just not quite got the speed of the game back just yet? I don't know, but I'll be tracking that to see that if he's accepted that he's a bit player in the total scheme.
6 and 5, they're in 9th place. They're going in on their trajectory now. They're going to be fearsomely hard to beat at home. That's such a valuable win at the MCG. Stuart Dew had a great few days in the they got that right category. Fronted the speculation, just took it all, planted his flag, got the win. Excellent few days for Stewie Dew.
Yeah. If you don't see it with Gold Coast, you're not watching. You're just not watching footy. I'm sorry, you can't just turn up and watch them live once every 8 weeks and say, no, he's not doing the job. You can't. Well, Gerard, to watch them every week. They've taken significant steps this year. The way they play now is difficult to combat. One of the toughest tests in footy is coaching against Luke Beveridge. They change the game all the time. Different numbers at stoppage. You know, there might be a half forward rolling up. Might hold 6 forwards. They might have 2 half forwards behind the stoppage. They bashed them. Matt Rowell had one of the great second halves, and they made a back 6 of the Dogs look really poor in patches. Outside of Liam Jones, they are so gettable, the Dogs. So gettable, it's not funny. They can't be a top team until they finish that. But when you're talking about Stuart Dew and, you know what, it's time to move him on. We've got Damien Harbick there. You can't sack a coach for a system. You can't say, we like the way the Damien Harbick coaches and the way they play. Let's do that. Because you build a football club on trust and a family environment, and that will reward performance. As a coach, I think he's performing. You can't just say, see you later. Because then 5 minutes later, you'll be telling the players, hey, we want loyalty. Can you sign this long-term contract? Hey, we've got to stick fat together. We've got to trust in one another. Hey, listen, come and air your vulnerabilities to the group. And then sack the coach when he's performing. So I don't understand the conversation. I never have around sacking Stuart Dew. Let it run its course. And then if the performances aren't there and the wins aren't there, eventually it gets you. But you've got to look a bit deeper than that, don't you?
These were 2 big weeks in Darwin, and to nail the first one down, and they had to win it again late. That was the bit I most liked about it.
Well, they had to beat 2 teams on the weekend, Gerard.
Yeah, God, there was
That
some
umpiring
weird
was
stuff
horrific.
going on there.
Horrific. The 50 was just a disgrace.
Just interventionist umpiring.
Oh, man.
You just stand there, watch what happened.
Imagine they
take
got
a deep
rolled.
breath. Yeah, this is, I guess part of the curse of Gold Coast is it would have been a talking point, but it wouldn't have been in the inferno that it might have been elsewhere. But yeah, some of what was going on there was
Gerard, you'd be disappointed
scratching.
if they do as we think they should do in the back half of the year, not fall away, just do what they've done the first half in the back half and get to 10, 11, 12 wins. They can't be moving on Stuart Dew.
The Dogs were they left the last of the 4 and the 20 points on the table.
I know. They let you down.
Oh,
They let you down. Didn't
this
they?
felt like the worst bit of the
You had the
weekend to
trumpet
me.
ready to go this week.
Oh, I thought, we're on here. First 3 goals.
They have to have a look, and I've said this before, they have to have a look at Aaron Norton down back with Liam Jones just for a week or two, see what it looks like. They're not going to win the flag with what they do on offense. They're not going to win the flag because Aaron Norton blows you away in the forward half. He's only kicked 21 goals for the year, and 4 of those were against Hawthorn, I think. I shouldn't have thrown that out. But he had a bag of 4, so he's not dominating the scoreboard. So can you have a look at just Lob and Jamara down there, who's playing some pretty good footy, and then cobble together a forward 6? Maybe use Bontempelli forward a bit more. Can you look at that whilst you go with those 2 pillars down back? Because in simple terms, the other tools are not up to high level footy, and they wallpaper over the cracks with Liam Jones, who's having an outstanding season. I think Luke Beveridge is clever enough to sort out how to score forward of the ball and still have Aaron Norton at centre half back just intercept marking everything. Just you need to have a look at it.
Yes. Yep. It's it lives in your mind vividly.
Well, if it doesn't, because you could win it like that.
Yep.
A seriously good midfield, an awesome pairing of intercept defenders, and the smalls down there are pretty good. Bailey Dale, Ed Richards. You got no problem at ground level. So I just, it's annoying me, Gerard. It's annoying me. I know it's a stone in my shoe, but I just think you need to work out just how good you can be.
They got that wrong, Dane Zorko.
Oh, Dane.
So it only has to be unnecessary contacts to the eye region to amount to a suspension, and it's clearly that at first blush.
It's hard to mount a case as to why your fingers are around his eyes. It's always the same guys having to defend themselves for similar actions. He just wears this one, I think. And there'll be some kickback from the club. They'll say, "Oh no, you're hanging a guy, you're going after him. It's unfair what you're doing with Zorko." But the reality is, he's in a discussion again that we shouldn't be having. And sometimes you just. You roll the dice too many times and you'll roll up snake eyes quite regularly, and that's what's happened here.
And the curiosity is the Crows. What might they be capable of in 2023? Don't worry about the futures market because the futures market is bright.
Oh, this year?
Yeah. What about 2023?
Well, I really like how they're playing.
Yeah.
They've got they're hard to move the ball. They were lucky to win that game, Gerard. When you look at the numbers, let's just sort of say that for a second. But against a high-quality opponent, sometimes you need a little bit of luck. They've got the spark players, the match winners. The forward line works beautifully. The midfield's going okay. I still worry about their back 6 a little bit. But he's doing some wonderful things, the coach. He's having an outstanding season. Can they win it? I'm not sure they can win it, but, can they get to a top 4? It'll be line ball, I reckon. They've got to win a couple of games against the odds. And this one next week, whilst it doesn't read as a game, big game for them, the Suns in Darwin is a big game for them.
Yeah. I think leaping progression would be to finish 5th or 6th and host an elimination final and make sure you bed that down, like on trajectory. The Crows.
Their biggest task is to get Mason Redman's signature at the end of the year.
Right, yes.
Their biggest task.
Provocative in its own right. All right, who are we going to put at 4? 4s, you dropped Melbourne out of your seedings last week. Kudos to you. What are you going to do at 4?
I'm bringing them in. I'm bringing the new Fremantle Football Club in at 4. I like what they've done with the game plan and giving their talent an opportunity. They've got good talent there. They're trusting them now. I like it. They get rewarded. They're in.
I can't bring myself to drop Melbourne out. I
what?
should, but I haven't. I can't quite come at Adelaide or Fremantle just yet. And the Bulldogs would have gone in if they'd finished their 20-point run, but not to be.
Oh, you're angry with them.
Sit in the corner for a little while. 3.
What will it do to get Fremantle? What do they need to do to get into? Is there a play-in game down the path? At 3,
such a good question.
well, you look that up. At 3, I've got Port Adelaide. Seriously talented, particularly that midfield. The way that Butters and Rosie explode is hard not to fall in love with. My only concern is Is it all Aliir behind the ball? If you defeat Aliir, do you defeat Port Adelaide? That's a little asterisk.
Yep, Port at 3 for me.
Yep.
If Fremantle go on a 20-point run,
No.
they go Richmond, Giants, Essendon, Bulldogs at Marvel,
I'm doing it
Carlton. 20-point run into the seedings for the Dockers.
I'm taking Fremantle out of my 4.
2,
Brisbane and the Pies.
1 the Pies.
Pretty settled, the Pies, aren't they?
Yeah.
Craig McRae's not going to rest players.
Okay.
He's not going to menage players, Gerard. I would like to hear that he's resting a couple. It's a long year.
Yeah, they've got a bit to go before their bye.
They'll be 11-1.
And 11-1's the historic marker, isn't it?
It is. 11 teams have done that this century.
Yep.